It's story time. The story begins. Let the words enter your mind. Neurons fire away deep into Imagination Central. There, any adventure can play out. Waves of blooming wildflowers roll in the summer breeze. Butterflies flutter across the field, drifting up into the sky. You build a Persian palace from shadowy memories. Inside, sitting on his ottoman in flowing silk robes, a sultan speaks to his emissary, his eyes drawn thin as he issues a challenge to his people to bring him a riddle he cannot solve. You enter Storyland. Now your heightened focus turns to today's storyteller.
Hi, I'm Miss Kaimio, and I'm a Spellbinders storyteller here in Longmont. And I want to tell you, this first story is the World Food Day version of Stone Soup. Once upon a time, just as the sun was setting, 3 weary immigrants came to the edge of a town. Their feet were blistered, their tongues were parched, and their bellies were aching with hunger. "I'm starving," said the first. "I'm exhausted," said the second. "Let's stop in this town and ask for help," said the third. Now, the people in this town were by no means rich, and what little food they had, they always kept for themselves. And when they looked out of their houses and saw the immigrants coming, they said, "Oh, look, hungry strangers. They're not welcome here. We know what they want. Quick, let's hide all the food and pretend we have nothing." And that is what they did. The immigrants knocked gently on the first house door. "Good evening to you, and peace be with you. We were wondering if you would perhaps share a little bit of your food with us, and a corner that we can sleep tonight. And we'll gladly tell you tales of our travels in return." "Oh, sorry. We gave all our extra food to the immigrants last week that were here. And our house only has 1 room." They both were lying. The immigrants sighed and went to the second house. "Go away. We had a plague that just destroyed all the food. We have nothing. And there's no room in the house." They too were lying. The answer was the same in every house that they went to. The townspeople always had an excuse. They had relatives staying, their kids were sick, they were getting ready to go away. A plague of mice had eaten everything. All of it was lies. The immigrants knew they were being lied to, but what could they do? Just as they were about to give up and leave the town, the first immigrant had an idea. They whispered. And in a big, booming voice, she said, "It's so terribly sad that the townspeople have no food to eat. But never mind. Tonight, as the sun goes down, we 3 are going to go to the town square, and there we are going to make a pot of our delicious and nutritious stone soup." The townspeople were intrigued. They had never heard of stone soup, and They wondered how it was made and what it tasted like. "How do you make stone soup?" they asked. "Well, we'll gladly show you," said the first. "Follow us," said the second. "And bring a pot, firewood, and a big spoon," said the third. Arriving in the town square, the first immigrant built a fire. The second filled the pot with water, and the third set the pot on the fire to boil. "Soon we shall feast, but wait for it. These are the secret ingredients." And with a grand and dramatic flourish, so that all eyes were on her, she reached into her leather satchel and pulled out 3 round, smooth stones, which she plopped into the pot of water and stirred. As rumor of the feast spread, the town square became more and more crowded. The first immigrant said, "Do you smell something?" to the other immigrants. "Oh," they said, "it's almost ready." And with that, as she lifted the spoon of hot water to her lips, the townsfolk craned forward to hear the verdict. "It is completely delicious." The townspeople gasped and gurgled with delight. True, some people may say it needs a little salt and pepper, but apart from that, it's practically perfect. Well, the townspeople sent their children hurrying home to fetch salt and pepper, which was quickly added to the pot. After a while, the second immigrant stirred the soup and took a taste. These extraordinary stones do indeed make an excellent soup. But perhaps a few carrots would make it even more perfect. In the midst of the growing crowd, an old lady called out, "Oh, now that I think of it, I've got a carrot or two at home." And off she scurried and hobbled back, carrying a whole sack full of sweet, crunchy carrots, which were quickly chopped and added to the pot. The third immigrant said, "Oh, you know, I think a truly perfect stone soup would have some onion and maybe some cabbages too, but what's the use of dreaming of ingredients we simply have not got?" Oh, said an old man in the middle of the crowd. "I've got some onions and cabbages too." And off he shuffled, and he wheeled back a barrow full of onions and fresh green cabbages, which were likewise chopped and added to the pot. After a while, the first immigrant stirred the soup and had another taste. These special stones make the most scrumptious soup. You know, it's wonderful. It's perfect. But you know, I think if we just had a little barley and butter, it could taste that much even better. Well, those were quickly fetched. You know, if we had a little bit of herbs and maybe some milk, I can truly say that even the king would enjoy eating this delicious and nutritious stone soup. Well, the townsfolk ran home and fetched every bit of food that they had hidden earlier that evening. They came back, and the immigrants quickly added it to the pot. Imagine food fit for a king, and all made from stones. Isn't it amazing? And finally, the immigrants announced that the soup was ready. But don't worry, there's enough for everybody. Tables and chairs were brought to the square, and bowls and spoons and napkins too. Lanterns were lit, decorations hung, and amidst the hustle and bustle, one townsman said, "A soup as special as this deserves the best. Let's fetch bread and cider." And so the feast began, and everyone agreed that it was the most wonderful food they had ever eaten in their entire lives. Afterwards, the townspeople listened with rapt attention as the travelers told their tales of far away. And the townspeople took turns telling about life in their town. Afterwards, there was singing and dancing far, far into the night. The next morning, the immigrants departed. Thank you for teaching us how to make stone soup," said the townspeople. "You're welcome. Please come and visit us again." "We will." And they did. And they lived happily ever after. Now, no one knows if the townspeople ever figured out that they were tricked that night. But in a way, it doesn't really matter, because they did learn one very important lesson. That when we each give a little, we're all richer for it. I love this story because it captures what is so important in life. That we're not isolated, that we're part of this greater whole, and that we all have so much to give and to learn from each other. And I think the kids love this story. It's the one that gets written down the most that they like, because they feel all of that too. Anansi and the Moss-Covered Rock. Anansi the spider went walking, walking, walking through the jungle. He was just having a good time, minding his own business, when he saw something very strange up ahead.
Isn't that a strange moss-covered rock?
Bam! He was out like a light. An hour later, he woke up. His head was spinning.
What happened? I was just walking around, walking down, minding my own business, and I saw a rock, and I said, "Isn't this a strange moss-covered rock?"
Bam! He was out senseless again. An hour later, this time when he woke up, he said,
I know what happened. Oh my goodness! This is a magic rock. And anytime someone comes by and says, "Isn't this a strange?" They're down, out like a light. Oh, this is so good to know. And I know just how to use it. And so Anansi went walking, walking, walking through the jungle. He came to Lion's house. At Lion's feet were a big pile of beautiful orange yams. Yummy yams. Anansi's eyes got bigger. He loved yams, but he was too lazy to dig them up himself. So he said, "Hello, Your Majesty. It is so good to see you. Say, it's such a hot day, don't you think so?
Oh, yes, Anansi, it's very hot.
Would you like to go for a walk in the cool jungle with me?
Why, thank you, Anansi. That's very kind of you to offer. And so Anansi and the lion went walking through the jungle. Soon they came to a certain place, and Anansi said, "Oh, my lion, look at that." Oh, my! Isn't that a strange, moss-covered rock?
Bam! Anansi did a little dance, and he quickly ran all the way back to Lion's house. And he took all the yams and he carried them to his house and shut them inside. An hour later, Lion woke up. His head was spinning. He looked around. Anansi was nowhere to be seen. When he got home, Lion was very sad to see that all his yummy yams were gone. But Anansi was very happy. Then Anansi went walking through the jungle, and he came to Elephant's house. His eyes grew big. At Elephant's feet were piles and piles of bananas. But Anansi was too lazy to pick bananas. He loved them, but it was too much work. Well, hello, Elephant. How are you today? Oh, hello, Anansi. I'm very fine. How are you? Well, I'm actually a little hot, and I thought, well, I'm going to go for a walk in the nice, cool jungle, and I thought, well, maybe you would like to go too.
Oh, Anansi, that's very nice of you to ask. I think I will. So Anansi and Elephant went walking through the jungle. After a while, Anansi led Elephant to a certain place, and he said,
"Oh, my, Elephant, look at that."
Elephant said, "Well, isn't that a strange, moss-covered rock?"
Boom! Down she fell. Anansi did his little dance, and he scurried through the jungle back to Elephant's house. He took all the bananas, and he put them in his house, and he shut the door.
An hour later, Elephant woke up. Her head was spinning. She looked around. Anansi was nowhere to be seen. And when she got home, she was very sad to see that all her delicious bananas were gone. But Anansi was very happy. Now Anansi played that trick on every animal he could think of. He played it on giraffe, rhinoceros, zebra, monkey. He played it on every animal except one. For all this time, watching in the deep grass, as Anansi played his trick on all the animals, was little bush deer. And she had seen every little dirty trick that he had played. And she thought it was time that someone teach Anansi a lesson. So little bush deer went deep into the jungle, and she climbed and gathered lots of coconuts, crunchy coconuts, and brought them back to her house. She piled them up on her porch, and she sat down to wait. Soon Anansi came walking through the jungle, and when he saw little bush deer's house and the pile of crunchy coconuts,
His eyes grew big. He loved coconuts. He loved to drink the creamy milk and eat the crunchy meat, but he was way too lazy to pick it himself. So he walked up to Little Bush Deer and he said, "Little Bush Deer, isn't it hot today?" "Oh, yes, Anansi, it's very hot." "Well, I was just going for a nice walk in the jungle and cool off, and I thought maybe you would like to join me." "Oh, Anansi, I would love to join you." So Anansi and Little Bush Deer went walking through the jungle. Anansi led Little Bush Deer to a certain spot, and he said, "Look, Little Bush Deer, do you see what I see?" Little Bush Deer looked. "No, I don't see anything." "Yes, you do. Look, right there." "No, I don't see anything, Anansi." "You do too, see it. I know you do. You just don't want to say it." "Say what, Anansi?" "You know." "No, I don't." "You know." "Is that what you want me to say?" "Yes." "You know." "No! You're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to say, 'Isn't this a strange moss-covered rock?'" Boom! Down fell Anansi. Little Bush Deer ran to Anansi's house, and she opened the door, and she ran and she got all the other animals Anansi had paid the trick on, and they all took their food home. An hour later, Anansi woke up. His head was spinning. And Little Bush Deer was nowhere to be seen. Anansi got home, and he was so sad to see his house empty once again. And Anansi went to bed very hungry that night. But if you think Anansi has learned his lesson, no. He's still out there today, pulling his tricks. I like the story because it's fun. I like it because you need to be aware of tricksters out there. And the kids love it because they love that a trickster gets tricked in the end and he gets his just desserts. That's another one of their favorites.